I am so honored to have on the podcast today someone who I get to call, which is such an honor, a dear friend. She is a wife, a mom, a daughter, a sister, and such a dear friend who has walked through loss with such incredible grace. And this whole point of this podcast is really to share stories, to hopefully inspire others, give people hope. And I know that she has inspired me in so many ways over the last couple years. And I am over the moon to introduce you all to my dear friend, Liz Shaw. Liz, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to see this new avenue that you are taking on. You are definitely someone that I've looked up to for the last several years through our interactions in LuLaRoe and being able to follow your journey and find out more about your journey over the last few years has been a real inspiration. So the fact that you're inviting me here to talk a little bit about, my life and what we have going on is a huge honor. So thank you.
Well, thank you, sweet friend. Loss and grief is something that everyone experiences at some time in their life. But I think how we navigate that or how we handle grief and loss is really different for everyone. But I think there's so much we can learn from each other. It's not a club anybody wants to be a part of, but it is life. And like I said, I think how you have navigated it, and I know there have been hard times. We've had those conversations, but I think you've just done it with such grace, and you are still walking through it. It's a daily thing, but you are walking through it in such a way that is such a light to so many. But I think that loss is so hard because of the love and the good that you had in your marriage, right? That's what makes loss so hard, is because we love so hard or we care so much about that person. So if you would, to share your story a little bit, take us back of kind of how you met your husband and what was it that drew you to each other, that made your relationship so special? Because I can tell in all those photos and in all the interactions, like there was just such a deep love there and a friendship and a connection that I think is so special that we all are looking for.
Well, it's funny because my husband was stationed in Hawaii. He's from Oklahoma, and he was stationed in Hawaii. He was very young, kind of like 21, 22, didn't even know that buildings existed there. and got there and was in the Army. And he spent a lot of time getting deployed. We had a lot of units there that went out to the Middle East, and he went out and he came back, and we ran into each other one night in a club, and we kind of saw each other. And as bad as this is going to sound, and my kids are going to hear this eventually, he call it the longest one night stand he ever had. But like we just clicked. We just clicked for whatever reason it was. We got along really well, and we laughed and we had fun. And we started dating, and then he got deployed again, and he broke up with me because, as much as this, he thought he was going to die. He was preparing himself to go off and die. And he didn't want to leave anything behind. And so he broke up with me, and I was heartbroken because we had just fallen in love. And here he was like, I'm out. Sorry, I can't love you anymore. And we went our separate ways. And then he came back a little over a year later, and same club. I had not been there in several months, but me and my girlfriend went just on a whim one night, same club, and there he was. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're here. What are you doing here? Like, what's going on? And I was actually dating somebody else at the time. And so we started to talk, and everything fell into place. He was actually dating somebody else, and I was too. And both of those relationships ended very quickly, and we came together. And it was just one of those things, like we couldn't stay away from each other. We had fun together. We went to the beach. We went on hikes. We just enjoyed each other's company and quickly fell in love. And he had to go to California And I was actually planning on going to California as well to further my career in the autism field. And things kind of fell together just so that we broke up. And then we like quickly got back together and got married right away. It's like, no, yes, no, yes. But we had fun. We really had fun and we supported each other. And we had a lot of ups and downs. Um, one of the first trials that we faced in our relationship was the loss of our first son. We got pregnant about a year after we got married, which we both wanted. Two little boys that he could raise, that he could teach all the things to, how to build cars, how to ride dirt bikes, all those things. And I wanted children, and we lost our first son. We went through a very challenging pregnancy where we knew that he wasn't going to make it. And if he did, it wasn't going to be a healthy life. And that killed us. And we actually got divorced. He and I got divorced because neither of us knew how to navigate that. And I found out, wow, about 8 years later, that the reason he didn't want to stay with me was because he felt so guilty. He felt that he had done something wrong.
It was somehow his
And
fault.
that because he was overseas, yeah, he thought because he was overseas and they were exposed to all these chemicals and he didn't know what was going on, that it was his fault. And of course, as a mother who's growing this child, I thought it was my fault. I was supposed to grow this human being and take care of this child, and I couldn't do it for whatever reason. And there was no reason. It was just one of those things that happened. And it tore us apart because we didn't know how to deal with it. And so we actually got divorced for about 6 months. And then after that, we got back together and quickly got married again. And then went on to build our family. And we were fortunate enough to have 2 more little boys that are amazing and crazy and just like their dad in so many ways, which sometimes drives me nuts, but most often makes me very happy, because I get to see him through them every day. But as we went along, it was hard. It had its ups and downs, and I was very blessed that we were able to get through those hard times, that we were able to forgive and move on in our relationship. Because if we hadn't, we wouldn't have been where we were when we needed to be.
Absolutely.
So,
Having
I
gone
mean,
through all
it
that,
was a very,
yeah, you're building these dreams together. And what did that future look like? You have these 2 boys that he always wanted. You have the family you always wanted. You're living in this beautiful place that you call home. Of course there are challenges, but it's building that dream, right?
Yeah. And at the point in time when he passed away, we had been living in Hawaii. We went back to Hawaii from Oklahoma, to help take care of my mom. And so here we were living the life I always wanted to with my children. I was raising my little boys in the house that I grew up in the community that I grew up in, with this amazing culture that I was surrounded by. And that's exactly what I wanted for my kids. And at that point in time, my husband had started his own company. He was working on heavy equipment, dump trucks, excavators, backhoes, and he was making connections within our community. He had become very valuable to a lot of people because he was honest and hardworking, and they all knew that. And he was who he was. He didn't try to be anybody else. He was a cowboy from Oklahoma living in Hawaii fixing trucks.
I love it.
So, you know, it was it was what we both wanted. He wanted to have this freedom to be able to be home with his boys, to teach them things. And, I have pictures and videos of them on excavators with him and standing on the top of backhoes and all these fun things that he got to do with them, which I'm really excited about. And, I was raising my children where I wanted to in Hawaii. So we were
Liz,
very lucky.
for sure. Liz, take me back to that day. And I know, anybody who's gone through loss, that you have probably replayed it a million times in your head. You've replayed those last conversations. What was that day like, leading up to it, and kind of walk us through what happened and how you found out?
It was a Sunday. And at that point in time, we had about 2 weeks prior, my in-laws had asked us if we would move to Colorado, take care of their house. Mothers and daughters, we sometimes butt heads. My mom and I were exactly alike, so we're both stubborn. And so it was our kind of move on from that chapter. And we decided 2 weeks prior to him passing away that we would move to Colorado. Goals, we wanted to have X amount of dollars saved, all these things that we wanted to do in that 6-month window before moving. And so he was working on a Sunday, and it was that morning. I go to church. He wasn't involved in our church. He was very supportive, but wasn't involved. But I took the boys to church every Sunday. So he got ready. He gave the boys a hug and a kiss, and he said goodbye. I remember very vividly, I was sitting at my desk, catching up on a few things for work. And he came in, gave me a kiss, said, "I love you," and he went off to work. It was a regular Sunday. We went to church, did all those things, went home, and it was we got done, I think, around 1:30, 2:00. And about a half an hour later, there was a knock at the door. And it was the man my husband was working for that day. He came to the door and he was just in tears, and he said there was an accident and I'm so sorry. And I was like, okay, is he at the hospital here? Like our local hospital? Do you know what's going on and stuff? And he said, I think he's there, but I'm not positive. And I was like, cool, thank you. And I was like, in my mind, I was all, okay, he's been bashed in the head. And now I've got this invalid husband that's going to be in a wheelchair, and he's going to be paralyzed. For me, that was the worst scenario. Yeah. That was the worst thing that could have happened. And I loaded up my 2 little boys in the car and we headed off. And from our house to this hospital was less than 10 minutes. I know this drive very, very well. And I'm driving and I call my friend Jamie and I said, hey, there was an accident. I don't know what's going on. Can you come get the boys? Because I didn't want them to see their dad. And so she's like, yep, I'm on my way. And just driving, and I'm like, oh geez. And all I could envision was his head bashed open, and now he's paralyzed. And as we pull up on this main road to turn into the hospital, you can see the hospital. And I saw the police cars, and I knew. And so I pulled into the hospital, and one of the policemen came over to my car and he said, Jamie's husband, who's a police officer, he called me and said, you were coming. I'm so sorry. And I knew, and the tears just started coming. And I grabbed my boys and we walked into the hospital, and there's a little waiting room, and the doctor came out. I'm on the phone. I'm calling my sister. It was right before Christmas. It was December 16th. My sister was supposed to fly in the next day anyways. So I called my sister, and at that point I was bawling and kind of didn't know, I'm just bawling, my husband's dead. And the doctor's explaining whatever he said to me, and the boys are sitting there, and I'm like, you need to come now. You need to come. Nathan died. I need you. And so my sister, she started making all the phone calls to all the other siblings and stuff like that. And they took us to a back room. They're like, you can go and sit with him. And so Jamie showed up. She's like, we'll be right here. And I asked the doctor, I said, can they go in? My boys. I said, can they go in? Is it okay? What's the situation?
Yeah, not knowing.
Yeah, I
was like, right thing to do in that moment. Yeah. What do you do as a parent, as a mom?
Well, and what they had said was he was at work and he was working on a piece of heavy equipment, a front loader, and for whatever reason, he was underneath and the bucket came down on him. And so it came down on his chest. So I was like, okay, so the boys can see him. So we went into that room in the back, and he was just laying there looking like he was asleep, you know? So for me and for the boys, I was very blessed that it was a situation where they could come in, where I could go in, and he just looked very peaceful. And so we went in there, and the boys didn't know what to do because my youngest was
at this time, Liz, how old are the boys?
2 and 5. And my 5-year-old was almost 6. His birthday was 10 days later. And so they didn't know really what was going on. And I told them that their dad had died and he's not coming back. And the 2-year-old kind of, you know, like, when's it going to come home type of thing, because they don't get it. And my 5-year-old immediately asked, when are we going to get a new dad? Like, for him, it has been the most challenging because he understood, like, dad's gone, but I need a dad. So that was heartbreaking because it was like, your dad just died. Why are you asking this? But then it's also like, you're 5 years old. You need a dad. And this is
It's those
so
genuine
hard.
reactions from kids that,
Yeah.
with no filter of thinking, well, I need a dad. So
Yeah.
when do I get a new one? Not that took anything away from the amazing relationship that Nathan had with them, but, and then as a parent, I think for me that, you know, with Seth being deployed, and that was my greatest fear. Like, yes, losing your husband is devastating. But I think the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around was, how would I tell my kids? How would I have those conversations? How would I help them through something? I think as the mother, you're thinking about your kids, right? In that moment, you're dealing with the loss of your best friend, but then you also have to be the mom and the rock and the, what am I going to do? And how am I going to care for them? And the millions of things that are running through your head that I'm sure were happening. And then you don't really get to deal with your grief probably in the way that you should.
Yeah. It's definitely, you have to take into account your responsibilities as a parent. And it was hard. And I wanted to make sure they were happy. That was my big thing, was like, your kids, like, you deserve to be happy. As hard as this is, you deserve to be happy. And I don't know whether I did things right. I know I did a lot of things wrong. That's for sure. I can tell you that. And my kids will tell you that for the rest of their lives. Yeah, this is what she did wrong. But I tried to do my best by them. We talk often about their dad. I had him cremated. So my boys each have a little box, and every so often they'll be like, can I hold daddy's ashes? You know, and they'll just sit with them, and they have some of his clothes and, you know, just different things. And so I've tried to be as open as possible with them. They can tell you exactly what happened. They know. And we talk about him. We talk about him all the time. We talked about him on the way to work to drop off my son for school this morning. So we don't hide it and try to pretend that, you know, it's, you know, that we're past it by any means. We discuss it often.
I think that's so powerful that it's finding a way to keep his memory alive, and be able to talk about him without being sad. But it's okay to be sad too, because there are those times. Grief comes in such waves. And I know you were just speaking about this, I think yesterday, talking about that. For me, in walking through, grief, I feel like, and I want to get your take on this, you know, the funeral and everything happens and there's this outpouring of support, right? And people are amazing and they wrap their arms around you.
Yes.
But then everybody else has to go back to life, right? Life continues. And so everybody goes home and the funeral's over and people go back to work. And I think for me, that has been some of the hardest times. It's the 2 months later. It's the random Tuesday night. It's when it hits you, when everybody else's life went back to normal, but yours didn't.
Yeah. And that's one thing my friend told me. She had lost her dad, and she had, you know, said to me, she's like, for the next few months, you're going to have a lot of support. And then everybody's going to go back to what they need to do. And rightfully so. My grief, my challenges, our situation is not anyone else's responsibility. And they have their own. Everybody's got life to deal with. And so I appreciate so much the support that we had. We had different communities that came together, from people I went to high school with, to my 5 a.m. Zumba crew, to my LuLaRoe sisters, to this community that my husband had started to build with his business, that came and rallied and supported us, on top of my family and friends. And then everybody kind of went back to normal, and we were left with no dad, no husband. And, during the day, it's not so bad. You're doing stuff and busy. At night, for me, it was hard. I watched a lot of Netflix. I stayed up way too late, because I didn't want to face the quiet of falling asleep by myself. My kids slept in my bed for far too long, until I finally decided, apparently COVID hit, and I decided it was time for me to sleep alone again. So that's when they got kicked
Too
out
much
of the
togetherness. We are together all the time.
No.
Mom needs a break.
So, you do what you can, but like you said, it's those random things. Just this past weekend, I had a large toolbox. My husband had 4, of those huge, drawers, wheels, all that. He had 4 of them. One of them he gave to me to use in my office. And so it's in our garage now. And I'm like, I guess I should clean it out, and maybe we could use it for a toolbox. And as I was going through it, that's where I had put all his things, his wallet, his dog tags, all the pictures he had on his side of the bed that were drawings from our son, and different things like that. And so I'm pulling all these things out, and I'm crying, and I'm losing it. And I knew I was going to be talking to you. And so it's been very much on my mind. So this past weekend's been very challenging. That grief has kind of sat there. And I'm lucky I do have tools that work for me. I was blessed enough to get into an exercise routine about 1.5 years before he died. And I was going to Zumba every morning, and there were these, classes that I was involved in, and it stuck. And the morning after he died, I went jogging. My niece was there to watch my boys. I went jogging, and I just listened to music, and I saw the beautiful sunrise, and I knew that he was okay. And I knew that we were going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to continue to utilize the habits that I had put in, the habits that I had been led to. I didn't put these into place. I had been led into a place where I had these routines to help keep me going. And my biggest one for me is probably fitness and exercise. Say hi.
Hi, buddy.
It's brought me to a place where I can process my emotions in a healthy way. When our son passed away, I didn't have those tools. And I did not process them in the right way.
Because in so many situations, you see people, and people would not fault you being mad at God, being mad at the world. This isn't fair. Why us? And turning to, like you said, things that weren't healthy to cope with them.
Yeah.
Because you're mad at the world in that moment, or in that space. And the fact that you had these tools, or they were put in your path, and that you leaned back on those, I think has been, to be able to watch you really lean on those habits has been so inspiring, from as a friend, to see you do that, because I know we've all been there, and I'm sure you had those moments where you just didn't want to deal, didn't want to go another day, didn't want to have to live in this space, but you found a way to sort of make it just to the next day.
Yeah. And I like how you said that. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I think being angry, that's part of the process. When I lost my son, I was angry at God. Like, why would you do something like that? That was my son. How could you take him from me? And it took me a long time to process that. And I didn't really completely understand, with my faith in what we believe. It took 9 years. It took losing Nathan to go, okay, God wasn't punishing me. I should not have been angry. It was fine that I was, but knowing then I needed to go through that so that when I lost my husband, I was prepared. My sons needed me to be the best person that I could be at that point in time. They needed me to be strong. They needed me to be resilient. They needed me to be there for them. And so my Heavenly Father blessed me with an opportunity to learn those lessons well before I needed to put them into place. So,
Wow.
as and from what we believe, I know that Nathan is with Tootie, that they are there together. Um, that's the one thing he wanted most in this life, was to raise his boys. And he still is. He's there with Tootie. They are just waiting for us to finish our journey here on earth. So he gets to watch from afar as these two young men grow up and become what they're going to be. But at the same time, he gets to be with Tootie, which I would love I have my moments where I'm like, okay, I would love to be on the other side with them. And I can't wait until we are all reunited and I get to put my arms around my son that I only held for a moment. So our Heavenly Father really did bless us in this process. It was a challenge at the time, but looking back on that challenge, God knew what we needed, and He provided us with that.
Liz, looking back, as you said, looking back on those first months, the first 6 months, the first year, what do you feel like were the tools or the habits that you put into place that really made a difference for you in sort of putting that one foot in front of the other, getting through the hard days? What do you think did you have a routine, and what do you think made a difference in that, sort of making that time for you and that space for you?
I did have some things established. Um, Obviously, exercise was a huge one for me, and I was involved in moving my body every single day. And so I continued that practice. Prayer or meditation, depending on who you are. But for me, it was prayer. It was talking to God. It was letting Him know I was angry, letting Him know that, you know what, I don't think this is fair necessarily, but I understand that I don't know everything. And so in this time, what I need, like, I'm here to carry out whatever it is that is expected of me, but I need help to get through this right now. And so that process of being able to speak to God and really have that relationship with Him was really important. Gratitude. And it's funny because it's the whole Rachel Hollis thing, and I had started to establish those routines of gratitude in my life. And
were there days where finding some things to be grateful for was a harder task than others?
After it happened, no, there wasn't, because it would be so, for me personally, and I don't judge anyone for their journey. This is my journey that I'm speaking to. With so much love that we were provided and so much support that came from the communities around us, I would feel so guilty not being grateful for everything that came my way. And there was not a lack of examples that I was turning left and right and, just being bombarded with blessings. And so being grateful was not a hard thing for me. And I know that people talk about trials and loss and finding that silver lining and stuff. And it's a challenge for a lot of people because those are hard. But I was blessed through Nathan's passing to be surrounded with so much to be grateful for, that it was undeniable. And I don't know whether it was my habits or whether it was the fact that I had such a good relationship with my Heavenly Father at that point in my life, that if I got discouraged, it didn't take me but a few seconds to change the way I was thinking and focus on the things that I had to be grateful for. So I've just been really blessed in that fact that I have been able to seek out those things to be grateful for.
Oh, Liz, that's incredible. And such an important message too of, you know, we all are faced with challenges, but it's how we react to them, right? We can't control what happens. You can't control what happened to your son or your husband, but you can control moving forward. What that does to
Yep.
you, does that harden your heart? You know, how can you still show up for your boys? How can you have a chapter? You know, you're a young, beautiful woman that deserves to have happiness, right? Deserves to have
Yeah.
happiness. And I think there's so many people that get stuck in that really hardened place of grief and not able to move out of it. And I think that's such a powerful lesson to go back to gratitude, as hard
Yeah.
as that may be some days.
Well, and I think a key thing as well has been service. It's a huge thing in the culture of our church, and then also in the Polynesian cultures. And I was blessed to be surrounded by all of that. And if you can step outside of yourself for a moment, you'll realize, go, yeah, go. If you can step outside of yourself for a moment, you'll realize, number one, everyone has something going on. And then number two, that you do have value. And through service, you'll find your value. And you'll find, people talk a lot about self-love. If you can step outside of yourself, you will definitely find that value and that worth that we all inherently have. And so if you can serve, whether it's a phone call, a text, a meal, holding the door open for someone, whatever it is, your family, your children, your husband, your wife, if you can serve someone else every day, no matter how big or how small, your value will grow.
Oh, amen, friend. I mean, if there's one thing that we can teach our kids, to be kind and be of service to others, what a powerful impact can we have on the world around us and generations to come. I feel that to my core, and I am with you 100%. You talked a lot about some of these things looking back, about working so hard to move to Colorado. All of these, the fitness was kind of put in your path. I know faith is such an important part of your life as it is mine. Looking back on those things, did that make it easier to move away from the last home that the boys had with Nathan, to leave that house in Hawaii, to make this fresh start? Or was it bittersweet?
I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, of course, it's a challenge. It's sad to, shut the door on that part of our lives, because that was where we last had him, with us. But there are so many adventures out there waiting for us, and he wanted those. And so being able to provide those for the boys and to follow through with the things that he wanted for them has been, I need to do that. I need to do that for him. I need to do that for us. So moving here and kind of closing the chapter on that part of our life. The funny thing is, we're not planners. Like, he and I were fly by the seat of our pants kind of people, like, oh, let's move here. Let's do this. Let's do this. And this was something that we were planning. Like, we're all, okay, we need X amount of dollars because this is how much it's going to cost for us to move. This is how much we need to have because what if it takes this long for you to find a job and all these types of things. And so it was very unlike us to do that. So when my mother-in-law when she flew in and she said to me, you're still welcome. Like, if you guys still want to move to Colorado, we still want you there. And I said, it was never a question.
Oh,
It was never a question as to what I was supposed to do. We had planned all of this. I knew. In so many situations, I think a lot of people during a situation of loss will say, what next? What do I do? My husband is gone. Where do
that
I go from
uncertainty.
here?
How do I
Yeah,
make a decision? Is it the right one? Am I making the wrong one? Oh my goodness, it's all on me
yeah.
now.
And I didn't have that. I said, of course we're moving. That's what we had planned. Here we had this plan. So I knew for the next 6 months that we would be having fun, living it up in Hawaii. My son would finish kindergarten. And as soon as he was done, we were moving to Colorado. So we just carried on with the plans that we had made. And again, we were blessed. I was blessed to know exactly what I was supposed to be doing next.
Oh, Liz, how do you navigate a new chapter for you? How do you navigate dating, still honoring your husband? My goodness,
Oh,
friend, like that, there is just challenge after challenge, right? That
mhm.
grieving process doesn't end, right? I mean, do you really
No.
think, I guess real quick, let's go back one. Are you ever fully healed? You people talk about, oh, well, I have closure and I have whatever. And I'm not a believer in that. I feel like when you suffer extreme losses, from my personal experience, I feel like that a part of your heart is forever changed. You are
Mhm.
changed forever, right? I don't think your life has to end. I think it doesn't have to be for the worse, but you are a changed person because of what you've walked through. So do you feel like there is ever that full sense of healing, or that this is something that you just will always walk through?
I think it's something that's always going to be there. I'm so fresh into this journey. It's been just over 2 years. It was December of 2018, and here we are in 2021. And it's still so new. So I'm cleaning out a toolbox and seeing things. I am taking out clothes that I couldn't throw away, that I couldn't get rid of. And still, some of it I'm like, okay, these white Costco t-shirts have got to go, but these things I'm going to hold on to still. And so I feel that it's always going to be a process. And there's going to be moments and there's going to be things like, I know when they start playing sports and I'm seeing them on the court or on the field, that it's going to hit me that he doesn't get to do this. There are going to be those times, and that's going to happen throughout their lives, because then it will be they're dating a girl and they're learning how to drive and they're doing all these things that he doesn't get to be here for. And so it'll come back. And that's when those tools are so important. I need to rely on what I know works for me, to get through that, to process those emotions. So I'm very fortunate in that circumstance that I have found what works for me. So I'll just keep doing that because it's never going to go away. And from what I believe, it will never go away. It will change, it will evolve, it will come, like you said, in waves. And, sometimes it'll hit you hard, and sometimes it's a lazy day out on the ocean where everything is super calm and you're doing well. So I just need to be aware of that and be ready for it. And that's when the exercise for me comes into play, and the gratitude and the serving. If I'm constantly in service of the people around me, first and foremost my family and then my community, I'll always know that I hold value and that there is a place for me where I'm needed. If I can find gratitude every day, then, then every day is a blessing. And like you said in the beginning, I loved someone so much and so greatly that the pain I don't think will ever go away of losing him. And I'm not sad about that. I'm sad he's gone, but I'm not sad about loving someone so much. I am so grateful that I had that kind of a relationship. Moving forward, I mean, like, here's how you date. It's COVID and you get on Bumble. That's how you date now. It's online. Everything is online.
It's changed so much, right? Since you navigated
Yes.
it, since I've been in the dating world, like goodness.
Yes. And it's funny. It's different and you adapt and prime quarantine, I did. I got on Bumble. I got on Match. I tried out the different dating avenues that were there, and you just chat with people and you try to figure it all out.
And I'm sure with that, feeling like, well, I'm ready. Am I not ready? I don't know. Did you go through a lot of that as like, well, I'm ready, but maybe I'm not, sort of doubting that? Are you at that place yet?
I messaged you, and I remember sending you a text, and I was like, does the guilt ever go away? Like, you start dating and you start having feelings for other people, and then there's this guilt that comes, like, should I be loving someone? Am I betraying my husband's memory by falling for somebody else? And there are still those feelings, and surprise, surprise, I got married. So, the guilt is there at moments, but I'm blessed enough to have found someone who can understand that I had this amazing relationship before him, and he's not jealous. And we actually just talked about him this morning. And so he lets me have my feelings. He lets me navigate the grief and the loss, and he listens, and we have pictures up of Nathan in the house, and he talks often with the boys about their dad.
Liz,
and he's very respectful of all of it. And I'm very, very lucky.
What a strong, kind man to
Yes.
allow you to have that space and love you through it, love you because of it. That's incredible. You deserve all the happiness, my sweet friend.
Thank you. I don't know how other people do it. It's a weird thing, but it's funny because I feel like Nathan had a hand in it, and he helped choose someone that he would want to help raise the boys, and he knew what he wanted to do, and teaching them how to work on cars and build things, and and here I am married to a welder who can teach them how to work on cars and build things and forge knives and all these things. And so it's like Nathan is watching us and guiding us through this next phase in life without him.
You had such big dreams with Nathan, building this family, having gone through that incredible loss of not having him anymore, navigating being a widow and a single mom when you never expected that, and now finding love again. What does the future look like for you? How have your dreams changed, having gone through so many twists and turns along the way?
It's funny because it went from with Nathan to without him, and it was almost like I was carrying on what I could with the kids, but there was that missing piece. I couldn't be their dad. I don't know how to work on cars. I don't know how to fulfill the dreams that he wanted to with them. I was trying to do everything that I could by providing them with adventures and experiences and making life fun. That's what I wanted to do, was make life fun. And so we were doing that, and I wanted to provide them with a sense of safety and security. With so much instability after losing Nathan, just emotionally, I wanted to make sure that they had that safety and security. And so buying a home for me was a big deal. It was something that I wanted to do for them so that they always had somewhere that they belonged. So that's what, as a single mom, that's what was most important to me, is like, let's have a good time. And I want you to know that you're always loved, you're always taken care of, that there's always some place for you. And so I was able to do those things. And I'm very proud of myself for being able to provide that for my kids. And now here we are in another phase of life. And I'm very fortunate that he's been able to come in and just assimilate into our family very easily. He found his place with us, with the boys, very easily. And he wants to do all those things. He wants to teach them to be responsible human beings, to be men of character, which I value so much that he's brought that to these boys. So,
and to his credit, that it cannot be an easy place to step into. Being a single mom and having kids dating is challenging for all of my friends that are walking through that. But then you add in the fact that this incredible person, who can you ever live up to that? You know, how do you compare? How do you still find your place in there? And, you know, just so much respect for him of where he's found a place to, you know, not try and take Nathan's place, but be there for the boys and love them and you, which I think is so, you deserve it. It's just so important.
Well, thank you. I mean, to his credit, he's really come in and supported us and our journey so far. And he doesn't want to take away from that. He knows what happened before was before. And what's going to happen after is after. And neither one is better or worse. It's just another phase in life. And so he doesn't want us to forget what we had before. He wants to make sure that the boys know that their dad loves him, and that he would be here if he could, and that he, now coming into this situation, loves them and is here for them in any way that they need him to be. So I'm very lucky.
4 and 6, almost 7. What does grief look like for them, or how would you say that they are navigating this? Because their experience is obviously different than yours. They were so much younger. It was their dad, not their husband. What does that look like for them? Because as a mom, I think we are so worried about them and how are they doing. What does that look like?
For my 4-year-old, he was 2 when it happened, and so his understanding of it is not the same as my older son. For a long time, it was just kind of, he was unsure, and he thought dad would come home. And then, he finally gets it that dad doesn't. And for him, it's very different. And the scariest part for me is, what will he remember of his father?
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sad, is that he probably won't remember his dad from his own memories, but from the memories that we share with him. So we try to make sure to share that with him. And for him, he's, he hasn't had a dad, for half of his life, he hasn't had a dad, which is sad, but almost kind of comforting, because he doesn't know what he's missed. For my older son, he's now 8 years old, and he was 5 when it happened.
Oh, that's right.
And he has had more challenges with it. He knew his dad was gone, and he knew what it was like to have his dad there. So there's been a lot of anger towards me, a lot of anger towards life in general, a lot of aggression. And I've just been trying to deal with it as best we can. We've done a little bit of therapy. He doesn't really like it. We talk as often as we can. And I've been fortunate enough that with my new husband, he loves routine and he loves structure. And so where we were almost in survival mode. I was like, I just want everybody to be happy. We just need to get through this day. And then all the other variables that came into place, it was like, let's just get through what we can and try to maintain. Um, my new husband's brought in a lot of structure, and that has helped my older son quite a bit because he knows more now what to expect with rules and consequences and things like that. And so his emotions, I think he can handle them a little bit better. Uh, but he still misses his dad. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
for a long time, it was, he said at a couple points, I'd rather be dead
Oh,
so I can be with my dad. And it's heartbreaking to hear your child say something like that. But he loved his dad that much that he misses him, and he's so little that he doesn't know how to address his emotions. um Now having a stepdad, he feels a little more normal, and he has the things that other kids have by having a dad, and he wants to have a dad. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that Nate has brought in more structure for us, and so that Gabriel has more expectations of how he needs to follow through with things. And so now it's really building on that. We have structure, we have routine, and so let's layer in maybe being able to communicate better and how do we address our feelings. And so we're trying to implement some of that, like some of the tools that work for me. It's like, okay, you're angry. Let's get outside. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a jog, climb on the bike, whatever it is you want to do, to help you get that anger out. So we're starting to figure out the tools that work best for him. And I'm lucky, is open to communicating. He'll tell me how he feels. He'll tell me when he's upset and everything. And so I'm trying to be respectful of his emotions and his feelings and give him space to feel them, but also try to teach him appropriate ways to express those feelings instead of getting angry, or aggressive towards me or his little brother and things like that. But
well, and those
it's
are
a
lessons
process.
he's going to be able to, yeah, that he will be able to, hopefully master, right? We're all working on those
Yeah.
habits, trying to know how to handle our emotions. And we all fall short often, but that is a gift to come out of such a challenging time too, is learning some of
Mhm.
those.
Yeah.
Even though we never want our kids to go through any kind of, challenges or pain like
Mhm.
there are going to be people listening to this who are walking through something right now, who have lost a spouse or a child or a parent. I know you talked about your tools. What would you say to them? What advice would you give? What would you just say to somebody walking through what you've walked through right now?
I think it's most important to realize that there are people there for you. There are people that love you and want to help you. And if you need that help, get that help. Whatever it's talking to your friends, getting therapy, whatever it is that you need, don't be afraid to ask for it. That's number one. Find the things that work for you. What works for me may not work for everyone, but they're pretty basic tools. So it's a good place to start. Prayer, meditation, service, gratitude, moving your body. Those are all tools that we can put into place now to help get us ready for those times when challenges hit. And if you don't have those tools yet, and you're facing challenges, give it a try. Try to find something that works for you. And then, wow, you know, you've come this far and it's going to be hard. But if you've come this far, you're going to make it. You just got to keep going. Find whatever it is and just keep going.
Oh, sweet friend, you are such a gift. You are a gift in my life, and I know you're going to be, your story, your message, your inspiration, I know is going to be such a light to so many folks. And I'm so, so grateful for you. I love you to pieces. Before I let you go, though, the final question I ask everybody on this podcast, if you could tell your 16-year-old self anything, any lesson that you've learned, what would it be?
My 16-year-old self, don't cut bangs and curly hair. I mean, if I'm talking to my 60-year-old self, it really is. Don't cut bangs when you have curly hair.
Oh, you're the best friend. Liz Shaw is a high fitness queen. I'll put all of her information in the show notes so you can go give her a follow. If you need just to pick me up, if you need to get your body moving, she inspires me daily, and I know that she will you as well. Thank you so much for being on here, friend. Thank you, folks at home, wherever you're listening to this. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode of the Love Lindsay podcast. Have a great day, everybody.
You cannot hear.